You're watching Daybreak. Thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir Fwamba. NC Fwamba is the chair. The National Alternative Forum. Sandra Njoki is political commentator. Franklin Mukwanja is the executive director at the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. Yes, Franklin, you had a point.
Yeah, I'm struggling to be on the same page with my co-panelists about the innocence they are preaching about the president on the impeachment. Looking at the track record of the president, this is a politician who is adept at building strategic alliances, has uncanny ability to stay ahead of his competition, has demonstrated his ability to make bold and even harsh decisions, and as well ride on wave of populism if it suits. He has had a very iron-fisted with, a velvet glove on the iron-fist approach to the legislature. Even the withdrawal of the finance bill had to happen in a sitting at State House with his own legislators. It is not possible that his party, UDA, could marshal the numbers as they are doing. And the impeachment only coming in strongly after the strategic alliance with the opposition of Raila Odinga, and say that, it's a little bit naive to be convinced to go that way, but that's their view. And also appreciating their occasionally partisan political and, orientation. But this impeachment, Ayub, is not just a political maneuver. I look at it in the frame of it being a stark reminder of the ruthlessness with some particular leaders, and it's very clear in this impeachment, to maintain power and the pursuit of absolute control. And I think this is what is coming out clearly, that when you look at the role of the Senate, you cannot as well refer to the role of the deputy president's advocates as heckling. Their duty is to cross-examine, and that is what they are doing. And they are trying to help Kenyans appreciate that, look, these issues that have been raised, the grounds do not meet the constitutional threshold of gross misconduct, of abuse of national or international law, or the other grounds that the deputy president deserves to be impeached. And therefore, we have to really debate from a very grounded point of view, and not just saying that this is heckling and therefore there is no ground in it. We can clearly see that there is a level of vindictiveness in the spirit of the impeachment process. And that process helps the Senate trial, being a trial chamber, helps Kenyans to look through and have a fair view. When the matter went to public participation, Ayub, the Kenyans looked at it and said, there is not much difference between these two. Yeah. President William Ruto had some reasons for choosing Rigathi Gachagua as his running mate, regardless of the views of...
he handpicked him, is it?
Yes, his political allies, regardless of him losing the popular vote among his allies. And these reasons are actually out there on trial. And was it because of the deep pockets? And could it be some of the reasons of the impeachment of unexplained wealth by his deputy? Or was it his ability to actually cut these deals? And these are issues that Kenyans need to understand broadly and in depth. And therefore, the trial, the quasi-judicial role of the Senate helps. So let us give the advocates their due regard, that they are doing a job, they are doing a service to this country to unravel the details that we wouldn't have had in the National Assembly.
All right. And because you have mentioned that, given the status that the Senate assumes in such circumstances, there was the difficulty in the explanation that was provided by the first witness who moved this motion at the National Assembly in first linking the companies to the wealth, and then second linking mathematically the companies in terms of the wealth, because they were not adding up, and we'll be getting that soundbite shortly. But ready? Yes, then let's listen in, and then Franklin, I'll come back to you.
At paragraph 44, at page 18,
yes,
you have listed a company called Spiritway Limited in your motion. Yes?
number 18.
Page 18, paragraph 44. It's a continuation of ground 7. I'm doing ground 7 now.
Page 18, Spiritway Limited.
What wrong are you saying that company has done anywhere on earth? What wrong?
I did state, I listed these companies.
No, I'm asking Spiritway Limited. What wrong are you saying Spiritway has committed anywhere on earth?
These are companies that are associated with His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua.
So, what wrong has Gachagua committed through Spiritway Limited? I'm dealing with this one now. Spiritway Limited. What wrong has he done through this one?
It is one of the companies that we reasonably suspect are convicts, are used as special purpose vehicles for corruption.
So, what proceeds of corruption have passed through Spiritway Limited? How much?
We have demonstrated the specific...
No, I'm asking what proceeds of corruption have passed through Spiritway Limited as a particular company?
In our evidence, we have not presented evidence against Spiritway.
You have not?
Yes.
No, in correct English, when I say you have not, you say no, we have not. You don't say yes.
Okay.
You have not presented evidence.
We have not presented evidence.
Thank you. Let's move to Fortis Vis Group Limited. What wrong has Fortis Vis Group Limited committed anywhere on earth?
Fortis.
Number 2 on page 18, company number 2. Sorry?
We have no
quarrel. Page 18 of 85 for volume 1.
We have no quarrel with Fortis.
Sorry?
We have no quarrel with Fortis.
I didn't get the answer.
We have no quarrel with Fortis.
You have no quarrel with Fortis Vis Group Limited?
We don't have.
What is it doing in this motion, Mr. Mutuse? Decorative.
It is one of the companies associated with His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua.
What is wrong with Fortis Vis Limited being associated with Rigathi Gachagua? What is wrong with that?
At the time of submissions, we'll be stating why we think there is something wrong.
No, we want that question answered now so that we will submit on it. What wrong has Fortis Vis Group Limited committed anywhere on earth?
Why would one person own 25 companies doing the same things?
What law prohibits a person owning 25 companies? What law?
I think counsel for the Deputy President, the Honorable Mutuse has said he has no quarrel with that company.
Which is what?
Settling.
So you say one person should not own 22 companies, isn't it?
I've said I do not have...
No, you've said so. That's your answer.
I don't have problems with Fortis.
That's correct. Who are the shareholders of Fortis?
Fortis is Kevin Rigathi and Keith Ikino Rigathi.
The only crime being they are children of Rigathi Gachagua.
Indeed, they are children of Rigathi.
Are they prohibited as children?
Indeed, they are children of Rigathi.
Are they prohibited as children of Rigathi Gachagua from holding shares in a company?
As proxies?
Are they prohibited from holding shares in a company?
Not at all.
So what proxy business has Fortis Vis Limited done? Because you keep saying as proxies. What proxy business has Fortis Vis Group Limited done?
I have already stated that we do not have any problem with Fortis.
But you have put it in your impeachment motion to support one of your grounds.
It is there.
Without any problem with it.
It is there, and we have stated the reasons why it is there.
Franklin, just one in many of the sound bites that we'll be referring to, given the discussion around good governance and constitutionalism we'll be having here in the course of this broadcast. Looks like on the part of the National Assembly, yes, they will have their bite at the cherry later in the day when they will cross-examine the Deputy President, who will be the only witness so far on his part. It seems the art of preparedness and knowing the know-how and knowing your staff is key. before you come to the Senate, and that's what was on display yesterday, that clearly the system and the procedure shouldn't be abused in any way, and there are going to be consequences if...
Yeah, I mean, Ayub, this is just one side of it, that the motion mover was in the dock yesterday for cross-examination. The deputy president will be in the dock today, and we'll see what the advocates of the National Assembly will also be doing. So the beauty, and we must celebrate this, is the framers of the Constitution gave us this beauty, that there must be a process that is seen to be fair and detailed, so that then we actually elevating ourselves to a higher pedestal as a constitutional democracy. But what is clear is that this is a political process, and there's no harm in the approach that Honorable Mutuse and the National Assembly colleagues took, and the supporters of this impeachment in the executive and wherever else. And the catch-all, cast the net wide, far and wide. And you just require one ground to impeach. So
out
even
of
the 10 fail and there's just one, personally, out of the 11, I actually expected one of them is not there. I actually expected that the real ground that would be turning Kenyans' neck on this issue of the deputy president was his alleged involvement in the Gen Z protests and inciting public to violence and such things. I expected that the DCI and the NIS would be there to provide this process, but that ground is missing. I expected a lot more from the witness yesterday, Dr. Mulwa, in regard to KEMSA, and that is the beauty of the cross-examination, that you can actually begin to see the gravity of the grounds, and you can begin to appreciate the fairness of the process, because then everything else is actually out there, and you can hear it and you can follow. And possibly that the maneuvers of this process, because this impeachment is more than a political maneuver, that they do not really rush the process of getting a new DP over the weekend and at midnight, but allow that even the deputy president can actually go to the court, back to the High Court, and have these issues now put to a legal test. Because Kenyans actually have suspicions about the National Assembly. Yeah. They have suspicions about the Senate. And therefore, if the courts have unfettered mandate and power to check the excesses of the other house, and even Parliament also has, and that is the beauty of the separation of powers doctrine with the Constitution, then let us allow this process so that the issues can come out clearly. And if we are resigned to the fact that this was a political process, it was not, it was inevitable. They had conflicting interests. They have different ambitions. And therefore, it was inevitable that President William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua cannot serve together. We bite the bullet, and the deputy president goes home, and he finds. I am not sure of what my brother Fwamba mentioned, that the president gets someone who he will work with comfortably and in consonance. We do not know, because this deputy had issues and even deeper rifts with his former boss, and now he's having it with his current deputy. What evidence do we have to rely on that suddenly that he will work very comfortably with the next appointee? So these are critical issues that we have to look at very fairly, in a very open way.
Yes, Sandra, I'll come to you. I'll give you the time.
I think it's very important that, first of all, I mention this because I would not want to be associated probably with a panel or a co-panel, or the views of a co-panel who's basing his entire morning on bashing the president. It's important to be objective. If you want Kenyans to understand what is happening, whether so that they agree with the impeachment or disagree with the impeachment, that we give the facts impartially, objectively. So it's neither here nor there if President Ruto has political skills, that he's able to create partnerships easily. And actually, being a firm-handed decision maker is a quality, is a leadership quality. So I don't think right now, if I may also use Mutuse's words to my co-panelist here, the president is not on trial. His characteristics, his personality is not the issue here. To bring in his personality and character as a way of describing his silence, we will be doing a disservice to our viewers, and we will not be giving Kenyans the information that they need so that they can make a stand on this particular decision. Now, when we go to the lawyers, they were clearly bullying. They found a soft spot in Mutuse. It's very obvious. I mean, it's very clear to see. I want to give just one example. There's a time when they were asking about the judge, the issue of the deputy president bullying or being seen to threaten the judge.
Esther Maina.
Esther Maina. Yeah. And at some point, I think it was Elisha, he kept asking Mutuse, do you know that at some point the DP's lawyers submitted XYZ document to the commission, you know? And Mutuse kept saying, my issue is not how or what he presented to the commission. Mm-hmm. My issue is that when you have a problem with a decision that has been made by a court, you make an appeal. You don't go and lodge a case against that particular judge, seeking to have that judge removed from the bench. And, you know, which is true, by the way, if a court rules something against me, I don't go to the JSC and demand to have that magistrate or that judge removed. I lodge an appeal. So the guy kept trying to repeat that.
Here's the thing, Sandra. Let's just get it clear. You'll proceed. I'll give you the adequate time to respond as well. Yes, there is the process to appeal. You can move to the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
If not satisfied, then there is the Supreme Court, which is the apex court. His concern was about the misconduct of the judge in that regard.
Yes.
And he alleged. He told the country that he will file that petition by 2 p.m. on a Thursday.
Yes.
He wasn't there. Almost a year later, I did ask him about that when he filed, and he said he had filed.
Yes.
But he never informed.
Yes.
So still, the Judicial Service Commission way is also a pathway provided for if you're seeking to remove or complain about the conduct of a judge, which is a provided constitutional pathway, which we can't willy-nilly get out of the debate.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. But the principal issue is here. And it is proven, you have even reminded us, that he took a whole year before he went ahead to lodge that particular.
He told us that he lodged there. Because on Thursday, he was never there. He said on a Thursday, he will be 2 p.m. at the Supreme Court to hand over his complaint, which he never did. But a year later said that he indeed had filed that complaint before the Judicial Service Commission, which is chaired by the Chief Justice. So the point is, to factually correct you, is then the Judicial Service Commission way is also a pathway provided for in law if you have a complaint against.
I agree with you, Ayub, and I must stress my point. Everybody who gets a negative ruling from court will always have one excuse. You will always find a reason why you feel that judge was not or was not fair, and therefore I would like them off the bench. What in my understanding of this particular motion, in what's contained in this impeachment motion by Mutuse, is that at that level, as a deputy president, you had a ruling that was done against you when you were probably an MP. For you to go straight, it is a pathway, it's allowed, but for you to go straight towards having a judge removed from the bench, and before you even do it, you announce to the public in a very threatening manner that I must get that person out, that is what he is saying should not be allowed, because you are generally exploiting your hierarchical position. Now, if you go to my point at this particular point is, Elisha wouldn't allow Mutuse to state that that is my only complaint here. He started taking him to the nitty-gritties of, do you know the deputy president lodged this document? You claim he didn't lodge. You know, he was just bullying him, but the point had already been made. So I just wanted to correct my co-panelist here that they were bullying. They bullied Mutuse. They were trying to sideline so that they could get Kenyans not to see the fact of the matter that as a deputy president, if you have a problem, why don't you follow the basics? lodge an appeal. If you're going to go for a judge, you don't need to stand up and say, I will go for a judge.
Yeah, and on a governance note, there's a question I want to ask you then. Doesn't this largely tell us the wanting status of our political establishment in when the shoe is not on their foot, when it comes to consistent and sustained attacks against independent commissions or constitutional office holders regarding any decision that's made or how they are going about their business?
Yes, it does show that there is a tendency, or there could be somebody's trying to create a culture where when you get to a certain position, you can misuse and abuse your office to threaten other arms of government, because that is the accusation against the deputy president. And I believe, and if this impeachment motion goes through, especially if it is against probably that one particular accusation of the judge feeling threatened, then we are going to find a scenario where we're going to streamline. We're going to streamline and control the excesses of power, where now government officials, at no matter what level they are at, they're going to be very careful at how they misuse or abuse their positions to get things done their way. Okay. So in a way, like I said in the beginning, this is an exceptionally good process. Yeah. It's opening up a new channel, a new level of democracy in Kenya, where both the National Assembly and Wanjiku, remember there are people who went during the public participation and said, yes, in fact, they were the majority, according to what the National Assembly told us. They said, yes, we want this impeachment motion to go ahead. So we're going to see a new culture, I believe, a new dawn in Kenya, where people are going to respect individual offices and control the excesses of their office.
All right. Yes, Famba, I'll follow up on that. Yes.
So what is happening today is a culmination of so many things, because whatever happened in Parliament yesterday and what is happening at the end of the day is not a one-off thing. Remember, the Deputy President lost this right from the day he was sworn in, because Kenyans have been watching the pattern and the kind of things he's been doing, and by now it has gotten to this point because of national consensus. He has offended different people at different times, messed up the provisions in the Constitution, preached divisive politics. People offended at different levels, but now every person had a dilemma of when the intervention is ever going to be made. And now the impeachment motion came as a result of getting to a level of this is now too much, especially now when you go to a point of contradicting the president after the Gen Z protests. That was insubordination. Immediately after the president made the speech in Nairobi, at the time of need on the side of the president, I think he expected to have all these people around him, starting with the principal deputy, the principal assistant, the deputy president around him. But instead, the deputy president chose to go to Mombasa and give a counter, as if he were the opposition leader or someone who is working to undermine the same government he was working for. So by the time this issue got to the National Assembly as a step towards impeachment, so many other initiatives had come up. For example, as an individual, I took a step after he made some remarks about shares and other parts of the country not deserving shares. I went to the NCIC and reported through my advocate, Otieno Alwoka, and demanded that NCIC summons the deputy president. I saw him the other day saying that he has never been summoned by the NCIC. Neither has he ever been notified that he has been preaching hate speech or a language that is displeasing to a section of Kenyans. Meaning that now that was a failure on the side of NCIC. But I do not think I'm the only Kenyan who is concerned about the way the deputy president has been carrying himself out. You look at his mindset. I think maybe he's not a bad man. He could just be someone who does not understand the Constitution. He's someone who does not understand the mandate. He does not understand the responsibilities and limits of his office. That's why his misrepresentation or misunderstanding of the Constitution drove him to even claim that he got 7.2 million votes, because he does not understand that when you run as a running mate, you are there because, you know, we borrowed our constitution from the American model, whereby, like in America, you see the vice president the day of campaigns, and the next time you'll be seeing them presiding over the Senate because the vice president is president of the Senate. And then another time you see the vice president of the United States is when he or she is given assignments by the president. But here, unfortunately, the deputy president mistook the opportunity to be the deputy president to look like a co-president.
Yeah. But Fwamba, then how do you explain why there was the cheerleading squad for the deputy president when he made all these statements that are affront to our constitution? Look, he made the statements on shareholding, which is against his oath of office as a national leader in Kajiado, in Nandi, in Kericho, and some other parts of the country on day one.
That's why I insist.
Let me just finish. I'll give you the time. On day one, he misled the country when he was sworn in. On May 20th, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics released the economic survey. This is the single largest source of economic data and indicators which informs government, business, and consumer individual decisions per year. And it says the government had, and get it clear, and I did this put this to him, 3.05 trillion at its disposal from both ordinary revenues, taxes, and appropriations in aid and grants when they took over office. He misled the country on day one. He made all these statements in different counties about shareholding. Why was he then driven to that point and seen as a yardstick for the Kenya Kwanza administration and then is crucified by the very same party which is in power to discuss that impeachment?
That's why I think his biggest weakness was misunderstanding the transition between campaigning and becoming the leader, the person now occupying office. Because campaigning, sometimes you'll go to certain sections and customize the message to fit the people that you'll be talking to, and they'll cheer you. Then you go to another place, you say the message that is relevant to those people. But once you get the position as elected now to represent all the people, you have to have now the unifying message and be accommodative to all other people that you lead, both those who voted for you and those who didn't vote for you. And that's why he looks somehow maybe naive on the basis of understanding the Constitution, that even when he claims to defend himself on the issue of shares, is saying that he's written the Kenya Kwanza document. But he does not have even time to ask himself, why is that nobody else is talking about the so-called shareholding? Because he misunderstood the whole idea of putting together that document.
The president talked about it in Murang'a County.
And I already explained that, that in Murang'a County, he said what he had given to Murang'a County. He never said what he has not given to other counties, or what other counties do not deserve. Because the deputy president has been juxtaposing all these points. He mentions those ones who deserve. He says those people who have more shares, others have less shares, others have none. The president never said that in Murang'a.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
in Murang'a,
is it then?
In Murang'a, he said, I've given you opportunity.
Fwamba, let's get it right, because there's an audience that is demanding for good governance.
Yes.
And it's fair we have you in the studio, and yes, your disagreements can be fundamental, but they must point to the direction of educating the public. There is difference between the citizen, William Ruto, and President William Ruto, who is a state property, ambassador #1, civil servant employee 001, and who is given significant political constitution prescribes. Was it fair for him to talk about shareholding as the president?
I insist that it was in context for Murang'a. And he said he was addressing those people, and he told them that you are part of my government. There's no evidence that he ever went to another part of the country and said, you are not part of my government.
How will the communities who have no cabinet membership in this country feel when they hear such statement by the president?
I was not in the Kenya Kwanza arrangement as they were making, but my feeling is that at some point, the president must have realized that it was important to be accommodative to all Kenyans, and maybe that's why he came up with a broad-based government. That's what I may explain.
Okay.
Which
still doesn't explain.
Allow me to step in a little bit, because when NADCO was formed, I believe President Ruto came out and very clearly stated that he has sat with his parliament or parliamentary
the
team,
leadership,
the leadership of parliament, and they have agreed that for the sake of unity and cohesion, that they are ready and willing and looking forward now to embrace all other political players. And that is why he said that he had now agreed, and I believe even your media station, they printed that at one point or another, he did meet with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. So I think we need to put these issues into context, as we said, so that we can be able to guide Kenyans accordingly. Mm-hmm. It could be that when he was in Murang'a, President Ruto was still in the mind frame and in the concept of I'm forming government, and I'm informing the people who stood with me that I'm forming government with them in it. But later on, he did admit to the country that I am not going to make it an exclusive government with just the people who walked with me in the Tanga Tanga and the Hustler Nation issue. I think it's very important that we also focus away from putting President Ruto on the spot on the issues that are being accused to the deputy president. Why do I say that? You cannot catch me that I have stolen this phone and you say, hang on, this is not the first time anybody has stolen a phone, and I start showing video clips of how in Nairobi people snatch phones. What are we trying to? What would I be trying to tell the judge? Yeah. That allow me or let me off the hook because thieving is a kawaida thing. So there's a misconception, and we even saw it when the country was going through the public participation process, where there was this populist call, which my co-panelist has repeated even as we were here, about talking that if you're going to go after Rigathi, then go after Ruto as well. No, if you want to go after Ruto, the Constitution says, lodge your own, what is it called?
Your own impeachment.
An impeachment motion. But you cannot, I mean, in all legal levels, moral levels, even social, ethical levels, you cannot say that this guy is wrong, but I know that guy also does things wrong, so we need to combine their errors and kick them all off together. It's important that we separate issues. So yes, he did go to Murang'a. Yes, he did talk of shareholding, but he later on owned up to the country and said, I am embracing the entire political class so that I make sure I have the entire country involved. But the deputy president did not follow suit. If you've seen that, from that time, he did not join in to talk about the whole inclusivity. Yeah. He continued with his story of Mulima.
You're talking about the broad-based approach?
Yes, the broad-based. And remember, it started all the way from NADCO.
Okay. So allow me to ask you this. I'll come to Franklin. We still have time. When the National Dialogue Committee concluded its sittings at the Bomas of Kenya, there were a raft of recommendations made by professional bodies, Kenyans who went there. In its final report, it largely focused on constitutional issues than economic issues. And the main reason as to why NADCO was put together, that team, was because of the anti-government protest in 2023 about the cost of living, prices of food, fuel, and other commodities Kenyans said are out of their reach. Why did it propose constitutional issues than addressing the economic pressing matters that Kenyans had complained about at the time?
I believe that it was explained that they looked at the constitutional issues as a priority in order to first create stability and cohesion in the country. Because as far as the government or the president was concerned, from his own, if I'm assessing from, his own sayings, tidbits here and there, they were not going to progress if they were going to remain balkanized along political lines and along ethnic lines. And he did state, or even the majority leader did state, that they acknowledged that if they did not, become united, not united in parliament as such, but if there wasn't that element of cohesion, a lot of the bills which they were intending to bring, which were intended to spur economic change, would not have gone through, because you would have one side fighting it, not because they're bad policies that are being brought into proposal, but because, we're not together, we are fighting. So it was agreed, first, let's come together as a country, let's come together as a nation, let's come together as a people, and that involved making a raft of constitutional proposals and changes, and so that once we're unified and we forget all these post-election animosities, we can now all focus on the economic progress of the country. And that's why you have seen, in the end now we have ODM players inside government, and guess what? They've been put in key places. Bandi is inside finance.
Energy Opio one day.
Energy Opio. Madini, mining, Joho.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask you how that addresses the Kenyan problem and also what this unholy alliance then portends for our democracy. The last time President William Ruto spoke at Chatham House in the UK some months before the elections, he labelled the then coming together of President Uhuru Kenyatta and then opposition chief Raila Odinga as a mongrel, so sort of relationship which he said has led to confusion. You don't know who is in government, who is in opposition, and the mishmash thereafter in that speech which he made at Chatham House. Yes, Franklin?
Yeah, it's a good morning and very, very interesting to listen to the very selective amnesia of how we are applying context. That when it comes to the remarks by the head of state, then there should be context to be considered. But when it comes to the impeachment process, then don't look at the context. Just make sure that you narrow in to the supposed culprit. I mean, those are ideal, they are convenient arguments, but Kenyans, I am certain, that are clever enough to understand and appreciate these issues. We know here to profile partisan and even parochial interests, but to discern these issues to a level of how, to what extent is our constitution, to what extent are we breathing constitutionalism in our constitution? To what extent are we living up to the multi-party democratic state and society that we bestowed ourselves as a country? To what extent are we seeing a healthy tension between the arms of government that are respecting the separation of powers doctrine? Let me come to several issues. One is that Ayub, actions speak louder than words. And before this clip was played yesterday of the shareholding in Murang'a, you could make an argument that possibly the appointing authority has only acted and has not been saying it. Mm-hmm. And possibly the deputy may have gone wrong by saying it. But then we have actually a scenario here that if you assess the way President William Ruto has constituted the Kenya Kwanza government, you can actually see that there is an imbalance. There are communities that you can actually clearly see that they have over-benefited. And you mentioned already some community that has, this number of cabinet, and there's no explanation to that. And some communities do not have. And my point is, there is one who's acted on shareholding as an appointing authority, and there's one who's been talking about it. I don't think two wrongs, make a right. On the issue of broad-based government, it's again a very interesting argument to hear this.
Before you come to the broad-based government, and Sandra as well, I'll query you on this. Franklin, then, because you mentioned a case of the problem being the two. It basically what started as a query against the deputy president turned out to be a referendum on two. Does that then justify the popular will by the Kenyan people who on the 4th of October on Friday, day one of the public participation exercise, said, yes, we appreciate that there is a problem with the deputy president, but what we are saying, they said, if you have followed the conversation across the country and we covered here live, is throw the baby out to the bathwater.
Yes, and the impeachment is about the deputy president. But public participation is a a value that we bestowed ourselves in Article 10 of our Constitution. And Kenyans have expressed, and they continue to express themselves, that on two things. One is that if you look at the 11 grounds leveled against the deputy, if you just changed the name and the date, it could be applicable to any other state officer in the previous government and in this government. That's one. Two, that they see that this is not a priority, or that Kenyans would want this government to focus on. And they see that the whole challenge around the Kenya Kwanza leadership is not just an issue of getting the deputy president away, that there's actually a broader problem that needs to be looked into. And that is a public view and cannot be taken away. But then there is a process, there's a system to follow, and there's a structure to follow. And unfortunately, it is politics. It's about he who has the numbers. And on this occasion, while William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta scenario, Uhuru Kenyatta may have contemplated, but then he didn't have the political wit to outmaneuver and get the necessary numbers, possibly, or he was just possibly a conflict-avoidant style of leader as opposed to Honorable William Ruto. Here you have clearly an issue of strategic alliances, an uncanny ability to outmaneuver your opponents, and therefore Rigathi finds himself in a position he is. But again, the question to the deputy president, really, what went wrong that you could attract, really, what went wrong that you could attract such detest and dissent from your political ally, that he could not actually be able to get the necessary numbers in the National Assembly to be able to, in fact, just make sure that there was a way that Kenyans could see that really, but 44 out of the other numbers, and then there's also the issue of the deputy president to look into. But allow me to just address the issue of broad-based government. It's again a little bit naive to say that, you know, the president became more wise and decided that let us broaden, and he saw light at the end of the day and all those things. I think it's naive. A clear analysis and an objective analysis of this is that there was an elite settlement to fend off the agency by the Gen Z. On the part of Raila Odinga, he has fashioned himself as the leader who can actually bring government to a standstill by running protests, and can summon Kenyans to come out there and do that. The fact that this, had been pulled, the carpet under his feet had been pulled from him, I believe that startled Honorable Raila Odinga. And young people went ahead to tell him that, Baba, stay away from this. And we have actually research that confirms that the peace or lack of it of this country is determined by how elite interests are settled. And you could clearly see that, we are actually being outmaneuvered, we're being outfoxed, outnumbered by these young people. And therefore, our collective interest is threatened. And therefore, let us coalesce together. I actually do not see that this is a solution. It's actually a confirmation that of the pretense that we have had from some of these leaders. President William Ruto, and I'm coming from a multi-party democracy background, that when we have elected and gone to the ballot and made choices, all right? We know we have a system that is a little bit troubling of trying to balance how the presidential system can work with the minority and majority, bestowing the responsibility of oversight to the entirety of parliament, and then you want a president that can pursue his agenda that forces him strategically to capture parliament. But this is not a solution. Having the opposition or the minority working with the majority is not a problem, but it is not the solution to our political governance and economic governance problems. I really do not see that. It's actually akin to a multi-party dictatorship.
Yes, Fomba.
Yes, we'll start from the aspect of public participation. You've talked about people saying there was this thing called Kufa Dereva, Kufa Makanga. I think that was a squandered opportunity by the Deputy President again, like he has squandered so many other opportunities. Because the report on the floor of Parliament that was presented by Honorable Milo Odhiambo indicated that public participation, 65% of Kenyans approved the removal of the Deputy President, while the 33% supported that he remains. That 33% is represented in that group that people who are unable to defend Gachagua based on his record decided to come up with this narrative of Kufa Dereva, Kufa Makanga, which goes back to what my colleagues here were saying, that if you are before a court of law and they ask you that you have committed a crime and you ask, are you guilty or not? You say, we are guilty, myself and those guys who are not before the dock. That means self-conviction or self-incrimination. That's one side about public participation. Then again, it cannot be so wrong that 80% of the National Assembly, the representatives of the people, vote against you if you're innocent. 82 out of 345 because four seats are vacant, voted against him. That communicates a very big point, that basically all these things that he has done have culminated to this process, and this process is approved by a landslide, and even the Senate today is likely to vote by over 80% against him after all this is heard. And you see, the biggest challenge that came up yesterday, and people thought that the National Assembly side was weak, was the perception, because what the Deputy President this side is trying to prove is what they have not done, while the National Assembly is supposed to prove what has been done or what the kind of crimes, the kind of mistakes the Deputy President has made and the kind of constitutional violations he has made to get to this point.
Yeah. And
get into the broad-based government.
Yeah, you'll proceed on that, and you'll come in, Sandra. To ask you this the Mwananchi question here. You talked about the overwhelming majority of the members of the National Assembly who voted to impeach the Deputy President, 282 against 44 who voted.
Including his own member of Parliament.
Yeah, that's more than 80%, actually.
Yes.
Why was Parliament then unable to raise quorum the next day for another agenda?
Those are very personal decisions for every member of Parliament. It is not collective.
So
every member of Parliament decides on what they think is priority to them, and the voters have 5 years to decide on
any agenda, Fwamba, can we agree, which is before the National Assembly, is of utmost importance to the Kenyan people.
I cannot defend Parliament collectively.
The point is, if we are to talk about governance, then we can't talk about that governance issue or the scope of it in isolation, because they are occupants of offices we have created, courtesy of our constitution, which we must speak to. I mean, you chair the National Alternative Forum. Your views are equally important on how we move our country forward. Therefore, I put that point to you. Just a day after Parliament voted to impeach the Deputy President, a political process, we all agreed here. Why was it unable to raise a quorum? Because the bell was rung by the Speaker until it took some time before they got the quorum. So what's of priority basis here? I mean, you mean there are some issues which outweigh the other for Parliament to consider? And there are less important items that they don't have to consider?
Accountability is at a very personal level. For example, all Kenyans are being involved in the process of impeaching the Deputy President because he was elected on a ticket in the whole country. Members of Parliament are elected in every constituency. So each respective constituent is supposed to monitor how his or her member of Parliament is performing in terms of oversight, legislation, and representation. So in terms of raising the quorum, it takes personal discipline. It cannot be a collective condemnation. But unfortunately, if I put your question in context, is a cultural problem that we have had a culture of indiscipline generally and lack of accountability. Amongst all people, it's just bad manners. Bad manners.
Okay.
So that
let's not, Fwamba, let's stay away from the broad brush painting of people who are not holding offices and they bear no response. They draw no mandate, basically. Like the Kenyan people, they hand over the mandate to a group of people to govern over them, and they expect them to be held to account. My point is this. You said it's a personal choice. I mean, how is it then a personal choice for a member of Parliament? Say, for example, I represent constituency X, all right?
Yes.
My primary responsibility is to legislate, oversight, and
and represent.
Represent.
Yes.
Yes, I represent. I draw that mandate from the people of constituency X, but I make legislations that are in effect binding across the whole of the country,
yes,
because I'm a lawmaker, assuming the hypothesis I'm giving.
Yes.
How then do you defend a house that had a presence of 100%, then the following day it was difficult to raise a quorum?
It's a legitimate question you are raising, and I think to make institutions work, we'll need to continue with you remember when we passed the 2010 Constitution, we said that we'll make it progressive. There is also a recall clause for members of parliament. Maybe through the public, we can also ensure that it is properly implemented so that members of parliament are held accountable and are active at all times and are of value to the country.
Yes. To your other point, please.
Yeah. Now, on the issue of broad-based, I think our country, just like all other countries, are right now working towards development. You look at the Sustainable Development Goals that have been put up by the United Nations. So every country is running against time to ensure that we are developing, and stability counts a lot. So I think the president looked at the situation, the political situation and the political environment that we are in, the antagonism between the opposition and the government. It was compromising the developmental program of the government. And he thought that maybe bringing the opposition leader together and working together for the good of the country make a lot of sense.
Can I interject
although
that?
on the aspect of democracy,
yes,
it's quite contentious because there's not one time that we'll ever have every stakeholder or every leader within the government. Because even as he says that there's broad-based, there are still so many other people who still feel left out in government.
Okay, so I'll hold you to account on that. When we get back from the break, we have an hour to go.
Before this,
you'll finish up. Frankly, you'll finish up. Let me take this break. It's very important we embark on this break. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we proceed, sample the feedback of the viewers here on the broadcast. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya. And our team in Parliament will also be giving us a live update from what's happening there. So far, the senators left the chambers at 11:15 last night, and they're expected to be seated by 9 a.m. to commence today's proceedings on day 2, and which is the final day of the Senate proceedings that is considering the impeachment trial of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And we yesterday had the cross-examination of the first witness who took to the lectern, who was the mover of that motion at the National Assembly, Kibwezi West lawmaker Mwengi Mutuse. So we welcome your contributions. We are back from the break here on the broadcast, and we proceed with this discussion. And in the course of it, we'll be having the live links from our political reporters who are at the Senate, Stephen Leto and Emmanuel To, who will be giving us an upbeat assessment of how that environment is building here on the broadcast. Stay tuned.